You ready? Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is like theater in the rain. It's fun. I'm impersonating a pumpkin today, as you can see by my attire. I'm the chair of the LGBTQIA Plus and Allies of Woodland Pond. If you don't know what allies means, it means friends, supporters. And we have many here today, which is great. We're a resident group that get together once a month and in the art studio at 2 o'clock on, what is it, fourth Tuesday. And we discuss various topics and we bring in speakers. This is our third speaker. Very honored to have Sterling Cruz Her, who is a speaker on trans issues. You've done everything in your bio. Various places, corporations, private groups, and done training for quite a lot of places. So we asked Sterling to tell us about Sterling and also about the very topical issue which Sterling's going to talk about. So I'll stop talking and turn it over to Sterling.
Thank you so much. Hi y'all, my name is Sterling and I'm an alcoholic, but that's a story for another time, yes. My pronouns are they and them. And I know your CEO said Sterling would talk a little bit about that, and sometimes it's confusing, sometimes all of this is confusing, sometimes I'm confused by it. And so it's really wonderful to be here with you because I'm 62 and I like talking to people my age and older because there are concepts I think that younger generations get more naturally perhaps than we do, like the internet, and frankly like gender identity. So I am glad to be here. It's also a very important day to me, which is that it's the Trans Day of Remembrance. And what that is a national day when we honor all the transgender people who were victims of transphobia, who died as a result of transphobia. And I was thinking we could talk in the abstract about people who were transgender, but I was thinking it might be interesting for you to maybe just take a minute and call to mind someone that you grew up with that didn't know really how to be a boy or a girl. So if you think about some people growing up, maybe a boy that was just acted a little too feminine, right? My parents would have said they were light in their loafers. But where I grew up, that was repulsive. I grew up in rural Southwest Texas. Yeah, and when my mother would see anyone a man who wasn't properly manly, or a woman, she would never say a woman, she would say someone who wasn't a lady, it made her sick. And I adored my mother, I worshipped my mother, and so I took that in, right? But I was wondering if you could just call to mind, just take a second, and I'm going to pause, and just see if you can think of anybody you grew up with who maybe didn't fit and maybe was ridiculed or talked about as a result of that, as just a way to think about the cost of transphobia. Maybe they certainly didn't have to be murdered, but maybe they were beaten up or ridiculed. Just take a minute to bring that person to mind. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. So this is a special day. People are gathering at the center in Kingston to grieve those people. And I have the honor of being here with you and building bridges of understanding, because that's super important. Thank you for inviting me here. Joe and Fred and Joyce introduced me to Joe and Fred and invited me here. And I want to share a little bit about myself, and then after I do, I want to ask you to share why, just get a few people to share why you would come to this event. What makes you want to know? And then I'm also interested in what you want to know. And I will tell you that when I do a training, it's usually 2.5 or 3 hours, and that's not nearly enough time. Joyce goes to the Universalist Unitarian Church in Kingston, and they had me there, and I did a sermon, and then they asked me to come do a Trans 101, and I did that, and I put an Instagram up that talked about the fact that the average age at the training was 65, and the oldest person was 87. And that these people were there because they want to have relationships with their kids and with their grandkids, and they want to remain relevant. And I put that 15-second clip on Instagram, and I got over 250,000 views of it. And so many positive comments, because younger people don't necessarily expect us to learn and grow and be open. And you being here is an example of you learning and growing and being open. So before I share a little bit about my story, I'd love if just a few people, actually I'd love if I could start with you, Joyce. Like, why was it important to invite me here? Why are you interested in having gender identity be part of the conversation at Woodland Pond?
Hi, I'm Joyce. My pronouns are she and they. I've been a resident here about 6 months. And it's been a really hard transition for me because this is the most binary place I've been in decades, probably. And it's very uncomfortable. I would like to see Woodland Pond do more training on gender expression, use of pronouns. And I felt that since I've worked with Sterling a few times, that they were the best person to come here.
Thank you so much. And so Joyce is one of those people who has she, they pronouns. Would you hand the mic back? Would you explain when you decided to take they pronouns and why, and to add it on?
Well, that's kind of tough. Because when I first started exploring my own gender and gender expression, I tried on a lot of different pronouns to try and figure out what felt the best. Most of them felt absolutely wrong. So I settled on she and they. That was the most comfortable. Probably the pronouns I would have liked to have used were her and hers for person. And I felt that was way too hard for people to remember. So I took the shortcut, I took the easy way out, I went with she and they.
All right, so when we talk about pronouns and we talk about they pronouns, it's not ideal. I was an English teacher in San Antonio, Texas. My mother was an English teacher before me. I know what she would say, that it's not grammatical. But in fact, we use they as a singular pronoun every day. So we say, hey, someone left their keys on the table in the dining room. If they come back, tell them they're over here. If we don't know someone's gender, we say they. We do it all the time, quite naturally. And with they, them, I use it because she doesn't feel right, ma'am feels wrong, and people called me ma'am until my voice dropped. But he doesn't feel right either. But he is what I get called all day long every day, and I'm much happier with that than ma'am. But they, them is much more difficult for me than it is for you, because I go into the store and I buy a guitar and I don't say, hi, my name is Sterling and my pronouns are they and them. They don't care. I buy the guitar and then I have to bring it back because something's wrong with it, and they start calling me the wrong gender. And am I going to tell them? I will tell you that having top surgery, which was a double mastectomy, was easier than they, them pronouns, because those scars healed. And having to use they, them pronouns is super awkward. But I don't have any alternative. I was intrigued by Joyce talking about pers. It's so interesting the English language is such that we need to know what genitals someone has before we know how to address them in the common tongue. Why do I have to assume anything about your anatomy in order to refer to you? So that's really kind of the conversation that young people are encouraging others to have. So I said we wouldn't have time to practice, but that gives you a little bit of background. Somebody else be willing to share why you wanted to come to this session tonight?
Of course, you're all on this side.
I'd like to know what the plus sign means.
Let's get some questions going instead of jumping into them, and also just why you want to be here. And remember that.
Oh, I just wanted to mention that I have a cousin, she's actually a first cousin once removed, who's raising 2 children who are both they, and they're both under 5, and we have no idea what their gender assigned at birth was for either of them. One of them, I think of them as a she. I don't know why, and I keep trying to analyze how and why I think that. But anyway, one day they were sitting at our dining room table, and they were under 5 at the time, maybe under 4, Mike 3, and their name is Carmel. Anyway, I said something about what Carmel had said or wanted, and I said, she, whatever, and they turned to me, looked me straight in the eye. This is a child that is under 5. Looks me straight in the eye and said, my pronouns are they and them. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake. And they said, I still keep wanting to call them she. They said, I said, I'm sorry. And they said, how did you know? And I said, well, your mom told me. And I love being around these children. They have a quality to them that I haven't seen in other children anywhere. They're so free, and they're so open, and they're so accepting of themselves. And my cousin, when asked why she's raising them this way, said she wanted to give them the choice, that when they were ready to make a choice, they could make the choice, but she didn't want to be the one to make it for them. And part of her reasoning for that is that she has a sister who was originally a brother, and when the brother transitioned, it caused chaos in their family and pain and suffering, and she didn't want her children to have to go through anything like that. So that's why she's doing what she's doing, to raise 2 beautiful non-binary children. And so I think it's a wonderful way to go.
decades ago, living in New York City, I was involved with a group that was led by a Catholic priest who was gay, and he was persecuted by the church for being gay. And he was in the forefront of leadership of gay activism. There was a group that the Catholic Church did support, but you had to be celibate to be in that, and it was really unrealistic. So that was my introduction to gay life in New York, and all that he went through and all that he helped so many people through. Now I find that I don't understand trans. There was a young person working here who took the time to explain to a few of us what trans was, what upper was, what lower was, what partnership was, but it wasn't enough for me to understand anything in depth. So that's why I'm here. I really would like to understand more about trans.
That's probably, let me just jump in and do a little more, and then we'll come back to discussing. So, I identify as transgender. So for those of you who remember, some of us had to learn a little bit of Latin. Trans means across from. And cis means on the same side as. So what is it across from? It's across from the assignment that the doctor made when I was born. So the doctor assigned my sex, and you can assign sex based on three things: genitalia, hormones, and chromosomes. So that's scientifically established. Gender is an internal sense. No one can know your gender except you. It's different from your sexuality. Your sexuality is who you love. Your gender is your sense of how male or female you are. So the doctor assigned me female, and I was raised evangelical Christian in a racist, sexist, homophobic household that would have been transphobic if we knew what that was. But I was a tomboy. I was always a masculine female. A lot of people grow out of that. Do they grow out of that because it's natural, or because as you get older, as a young woman, you're expected to take on certain roles? And the same thing for men, right? You're expected not to cry, not to be nurturing. There are all these boxes that we're forced into. When a doctor says you are male or you are female, he's saying a lot about your life and what's possible in your life. So I, at 21, fell in love with an English teacher who taught across the hall from me, and I began to identify as a lesbian. And I was in relationships with women. I still am. I'm married to my wife of 20 plus years. We live in Kingston. And so when I met her, she identified as bisexual. She'd been with men before, and here she was with me. I was a woman, so that made her a lesbian. And so there's transgender, which is people who are across from the assignment of the doctor. It doesn't mean you're all the way to the other side. You could say, well, you were a female and now you're a male. It used to be that way. Joyce said, this is the most binary place I've ever been. I don't know if everyone knows what that means, but it basically means sex segregated, is another way to say it, divided by the sexes, right? And so, with transgender identity, it used to be very much, for instance, my best friend is a transgender woman, and she transitioned 20 plus years ago. And back then, she had to convince the doctor that she would be able to pass as a woman. That was how doctors who decided whether or not to do surgery or give hormones, that's how they decided. And the reason that they did was because they knew how dangerous it would be. They knew that it would put someone's life at great risk if they helped them get hormones and they weren't then read as a female. So that, back then it was much more binary. You were either a male or you became a female. But what's happened in the ensuing years is there's this idea of a spectrum. And just as people aren't all the way gay or all the way straight, there's this understanding that some people may, for instance, have fantasies that are straight even though they're gay. So there were, what was that, the Kinsey report, right? Who, they were the ones who taught us about that 20 plus years ago. So the idea is there's this in between. And I lived as a female and I was a butch lesbian. So my sense of gender was very masculine. And my wife was very feminine. So we were kind of butch femme, which is old school. And I started working at this place called Sage, which serves LGBTQ elders in New York. And I met a lot of younger people there who were transgender. And I also met them in my Brooklyn neighborhood, and they confused me. And the reason they confused me is because they would, for instance, you'd see this person who looked like a butch lesbian, but they had really bright toenail polish on. And they were kind of not just being all the way one way or the other, they were just mixing it up. And frankly, like my mom's kind of transphobia came back to me, it kind of made me sick. Why aren't you doing what you're supposed to do? At least I do the butch thing, I do it all the way. So I start working at Sage and I meet these, when I was in Brooklyn, I wanted to learn about this stuff. And I would start talking to these kids. And they'd start talking in language and with terms, and I'd get really confused. And they'd get frustrated, and I'd get frustrated. But I knew they were my community, and I knew I wanted to be in a relationship with them. I knew I wanted to play the role of elder, be in the role of elder, which was important for me as I was coming up. There were older lesbians who told me about my community. And so I started this fashion website called Dapper Q. And it was for those of us transgressing men's fashion. And I thought maybe we could learn how to tie bow ties together, not talk about all these fancy terms I don't understand. And maybe in doing that, we could build relationships and I could understand what's going on. And I did that, and it became very successful. The last event I did before I sold it was a fashion show at the Brooklyn Museum with 1,500 people. We had 38 models and 17 brands that were serving kind of this gender-bendy kind of fashion. So then I start working at Sage, I meet all these younger people, I feel really good around them, and they say, Sterling, you don't have to be, it's not too late for you. If you feel like being she doesn't fit, you can do whatever you want. I was like, no, it's too late. It's not too late. So I thought, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna change my name to a very gendered name. So I picked the coolest name in the world, and I changed my name. And everybody was so nice about it. It was really nice. Hi, I'm Sterling. Like I felt like a spy or something. And my wife's like, okay, all right. So time goes by, and I thought, these pronouns, being called she just feels uncomfortable. I think I'm gonna use they, them pronouns. And that was really hard on my wife because she married a woman. And she said, well, what does that mean for our godchildren? What does that mean for our nieces and nephews? Do I not get to call you my wife anymore? So these were tough things. And we got through it because we had been together a while. And I said to her, but I won't do anything else. And then I realized, I want to have top surgery, which is a double mastectomy. And she liked my breasts. And she didn't like that idea. And I had to get diagnosed with gender dysphoria, which is a condition of people who have severe distress between the sex they were assigned at birth and their gender. And I had this double mastectomy, and it was amazing. I felt so at home in my body, and I said to her, but I'm not doing anything else. I am especially not gonna be doing testosterone. Okay, so then a couple of years go by, we go visit friends in Florida. I've got no breasts, I dress like a man. I'm manned everywhere I go in Florida. And it just got to me, and I said to her, we were driving back, I said, I think I need to go on testosterone. And so I did, and my voice lowered, and immediately, that was like the final thing. Everyone started calling me sir. And I don't think I look that different. But my voice changed. I lost my singing voice, and my voice was home for her. And it was rough on her, and it was rough on our marriage. And most people who have a partner who transitions don't stay together, because it's really hard. But we fortunately had a lot of love and commitment and conversation, and we've moved through that time. So I said, remember I said the Latin root is trans, means across from, and cisgender, means on the same side as what the doctor said. So I would imagine most people in this room identify as cisgender. So my wife is cisgender. She was bisexual. Now she's not with a woman. She's not with a man. So she becomes pansexual, which is pan, means all, like a pantheism. All, so she can fall in love with people who are male or female or in between. But all these things that I did then had impact on her. So what I want to do right now is I want to stop, and I want to answer one quick question about the plus before I turn it over, because we just have the one thing. So all these, there's no committee on high that's decided what all these terms mean. So for instance, I said bisexual means people who are attracted to men or women. When we were at the Universalist Unitarian Church, somebody said, that's not what it means. It means anybody. Now I think of bi as the root, meaning two, which is he or she. They're saying that's not what it means. So what's happening is there's all sorts of interpretations of these terms. A lot of people who are non-binary, and non-binary means that the bi is the he or she. So if you're not the he or the she, you're non-binary. I'm not committing to one of those two. I'm in the middle. So a lot of people think that if you're non-binary, you're transgender, because you're not what the doctor said you were assigned at birth. But a lot of people say I'm not binary and I'm not transgender. So the plus is really making room for all those identities. When I go to the doctor and they say, what is your sexual orientation? I'm not lesbian, I'm not bisexual, I'm transgender, but lesbian, bisexual, gay, none of those apply to me. The only word that applies to me is Q, which is queer. And queer is kind of this catch-all. And the problem with that for a lot of older folks, particularly older gay and lesbian folks, is that was a slur. So older folks don't want to be called queer, but a lot of younger folks have embraced it, and I don't really have any alternative. So the plus is really just the idea that it's I think the way I think about it is people whose orientation of gender or sexual orientation is outside the mainstream. It includes intersex, which is people who are born with ambiguous genitalia. So the doctor can't tell if you're male or female. The activists try and get people, doctors, to not do surgery right away. That's called coercive surgery, where they say to the parents, looking at this kid, looks to me like that's more of a penis than a vagina. I'm gonna do a surgery before you take him home. I'll make it more like a penis. And a lot of people say, let the kid decide. Don't decide based, because genitalia is very, very different. There's millions of, every genitalia is different than the other. So I'm gonna stop there, and I'm gonna open it up for questions, discussions, saying that some of this is really complicated, some of it's very political. So let's just open it up for some questions, and I do wanna, when I come back to talk a little bit about this particular moment in time and what I'm thinking about as a trans person in America. And I wanna ask for people who haven't spoke, let's just try and open it up and see who's got a question or a comment or something they wanna share.
I am a member of the LGBTQ plus and ally group here. I joined as an ally. I have a daughter who is lesbian. She is happily married, and they have a son, which my daughter gave birth to. The 7-year-old son is very much exploring gender. He wore a skirt to the first day of 2nd grade, for instance. He has very long hair, and yet he plays soccer like a little boy, and he's got the energy of a, typical little boy. But he's also very kind, very nurturing. He's going to be one of those individuals, I think, who has both. So that's just fun and interesting to watch. I was very impressed because last year his 1st grade teacher went and took a course in order to be able to be more supportive of him, which I thought was wonderful. And he's just amazing. So.
I have a grandniece who is non-binary and prefers to be used they. And my sister said to me, oh, it's your fault, it's your genes. So I said, well, what do you mean? She said, yeah, because she likes to go on the stage and act. That's your genes, it's your fault. So I laughed. But my sister has really come around. She has a lesbian granddaughter and a non-binary, I guess lesbian as well. She has a girlfriend, so I don't know how that, maybe you can explain how that works. And totally great about it, and become quite an ally. And when my grandniece was not able to go to the prom with her girlfriend, my sister, her grandmother, called the school and took care of that. So she's become an ally.
Hi, I guess I was responding to Joyce because I heard in the way you said that this is the most binary place I've ever lived, that there was some distress about that for you. And that makes me feel very sad. And I'm wondering if there's anything that we can do to make you feel more a part of this community.
I don't want to put you on the spot with answering that. I could talk about, go.
I would be a lot more comfortable if everybody's starting putting their pronouns on their name tags. Which is very easy to do.
So that is just a way of showing support.
Joyce, I was also interested in your comment because being one of only 2 minorities in this community, and I've lived here for 14 years, I come from New York City where there's every shade of person, and here it's so homogeneous. After 14 years, I still don't feel quite comfortable.
Well, we started the group, doesn't that help?
When I worked at Sage, we did a certification program for assisted living facilities and nursing homes so that people who are LGBT know what's safe. And what does safe look like? Safe looks like people who've been trained, staff who's been trained to be culturally competent. So when I was thinking about transitioning, I was thinking, okay, I'm 55 years old. In the not too distant future, I'm in a nursing home and I'm in a shower waiting for an attendant to bring me a towel, and they don't approve of me. And they don't bring me that towel, and I'm standing there shivering. Like, there also may be trans people here, or intersex people here, or people who are obviously homosexual, gay, queer, however you want to say it, that are in the closet, right? And so more and more people will be coming in here, and there are ways, just like with race training, to try and begin that cultural competence. But certainly things like pronouns are these signals that people send to say we are welcoming, I am a safe person.
Well, I'm here because of some comment I made, which I don't remember making, but Fred emailed me and said, I remember you saying that I have no concept of, and thank you, you've enlightened me, it's helped, but I think what I was referring to when I first made comment was that we were told that we need to know, to understand the pronouns for the sake of our young staff. Because apparently somebody or somebodies had been offended or upset because we have no, I as a total naive, whatever I am, have no experience or understanding of these pronouns, and you have helped. But it wouldn't occur to us of my age that, and it's very interesting what Joyce said, and I too am distressed that she doesn't feel comfortable. But I have no experience or knowledge, and therefore it's a lack of information, not that we're feeling cruel to you or unwelcoming to you. I've known a number of lesbians or gay people through my life, and I just accept them as what they are, without any need for a pronoun, and you know, a different pronoun, because I don't feel as if you're different. So there's so many things going on here that you look like a woman, and so I just relate to you as a woman. But I was married, and so there's just a lot going on here, and I don't pretend to have an understanding, but it's very enlightening. I certainly thank Fred for getting in touch with me.
So I did a training today on disability and on how many disabilities are hidden. That's another thing younger people are helping us understand, is things like sensory disability, where some kids in classrooms can't function because of the fluorescent lights. And so people are thinking through, the room's too loud. And we make a lot of assumptions, right? And I think with the example of, I just accept people that, for those of us who are white, for instance, we have a white experience and we don't know what it's like to be a person of color. And for me, having to unlearn that privilege has been about 10 years of going to workshops, of watching movies, of reading books, of talking to people, of reading the news. There's no way I can unlearn racism in America and how it impacted me without a great deal of study and commitment. And it's the same thing with gender identity. We assume a lot of things about people. And we assume, I know who you are, I know what your genitalia is, I know what you feel inside about how male or female you are, and we don't. And that's what the young people are inviting us to consider with the story that you gave about your non-binary relations, that they're deciding for themselves. They're opening the box up. And so you won't learn this quickly. I could come to a 2-hour training and you'd learn a little bit more, and then you'd read a little bit more, and then you'd watch a movie. If we're open, we can learn. If we're open to young people, we can learn. We do trainings, but don't expect you're gonna learn, because it's a whole different way of thinking, right? So thanks for sharing all that. And thanks for all the concern you're expressing. Who else?
I know someone, a friend of mine, whose granddaughter is now her grandson. And I just admire how quickly she speaks of him as her grandson. And she never gets the pronouns confused. I think that's so accepting and wonderful of her. But I'm wondering if I will ever learn that a singular person walking down the street to be a they. I'm going to have a hard time with that.
And I will tell you that I make mistakes too. I misgender myself sometimes. So at our age, we're not going to be perfect. We're going to try. And you might want to know how to say, how to correct yourself. You just say, I'm sorry. What I meant was he, or what, and you don't make a big deal of it, or you don't say, oh, it's difficult for me, the grammar. You don't make it about yourself. You just correct yourself and move on. And you might make a mistake again 2 seconds later, and you do it again. You just correct yourself and move on, right? I'd like to share just a little bit about this moment in time. We had a seismic national event about 2 weeks ago, 2 Wednesdays ago, and talk about the reality that trans people are facing. So the most campaign dollars were spent on an ad that was about transgender people. And $215 million spent on an ad that said, this candidate is for they, them. This candidate is for you. Mm-hmm. So the transgender community, as you well know, has become a punching bag in national dialogue. So what does that mean now for trans people around you? Well, about a month ago, my wife and I started getting anti-trans propaganda on our step under a rock. We got a series of 3 letters under a rock on our steps. One was part typed and part handwritten, and it was this ranty kind of stuff all off the internet about gender affirming care and all the, it was just horrible. We did get the police involved, and there were apparently a total of 3 households that were receiving this, and they eventually figured out who it was. And this person lives relatively close by, and they've told this person not to do it, and the person said, I didn't do it. But that's kind of scary, to have had people doing that. We have a pride flag on our house, which is what the other 2 houses did too. So we were targeted because we have a pride flag up. So that's kind of scary. I worry about the fact that I did change my driver's license and my passport to have male gender markers. And what that means is, with a punch of a button, the government could print out a report to see everyone who's changed their gender markers. So they could that quickly have a list, not of all of us for sure, but a lot of us. I wasn't able to change my birth certificate because I'm from the great state of Texas that doesn't allow that. So in Odessa, Texas, they just put out a bounty that says if you catch someone going to the wrong bathroom, you get a $10,000 bounty. So that means I could either go in the women's room, which you can imagine they'd be super psyched to have me there, or go into, if I go in there, then I could be arrested. Really worried about, like this, an executive order could eliminate gender-affirming care from Medicaid and Medicare, right? So I particularly worry about trans elders and the fact that they could be blocked from, we could be blocked from coverage. I heard stories about up in Hudson, there's been some people driving around with baseball bats calling out anti-trans slurs. There's this emboldenedness, right? Queer couple on my blog has so it's a trans man and he's married to a gay man, and they have a 10-year-old son, and the son was in school and said, my dad gave birth to me, and they said, the teacher said, that's not possible, your dad's lying to you, you must be adopted. Got the whole class laughing. So what kind of environment is this? So a lot of trans people are looking at how they get visas out of the country. We're not going to do that. But we're really afraid. Should we take down our flag? I have a red pickup truck I love very much. Should I take the queer flag off my truck? I have to start scrubbing the internet. Jill and Fred were asking about recording this. I'm starting to try and get my address off of the internet. As I mentioned, my best friend is a trans woman, and when there was the mass shooting in Boston a couple of years ago, the FBI contacted her and said, this shooter had your name on the list. This is not just about being trans, but she's also Jewish. So there's this combination of Jewishness and transness that certain people have even more of a problem with. So just to say that it's going to be scary times for trans people. We expect to be targeted with policies pretty immediately. And when the vice presidential pick was picked, I was out in my kayak and I thought, I need to really enjoy this beautiful river right now, because I do believe I could be in jail a year from now. Because I do this kind of training, and because it's on the internet. And some of you have experience with being part of religious traditions where you or your family had to erase your identity to survive. As an elder, I want to be visible. I want to say to young people, it's okay, but I don't know that it'll be okay. So it's just a scary, scary time. Let me open it up for more questions about things you're wondering, comments about what's going on, current environment, anything you want to discuss as we move toward 8:15.
Well, it's interesting that the first trans woman is in Congress now, and quickly Mike Johnson passed this edict that in order to use a bathroom, you have to be the biological sex of the person that the bathroom is designated for. So this witch of a woman, I think her name is Mace, was ranting about why do we have something like this, and da 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 da. It was pretty ugly, but it's on the national scene now.
Yeah, so Alexa's the first transgender member of the House of Representatives. First move is just to say, you can't use the bathroom. You were elected by the people of South Carolina to represent us, but you cannot use the public restroom. Go to the men's room. How safe would she be in the men's room?
On the morning after the election, my grandson evidently cried out of fear, which I think is terrible, just sad.
Well, you probably know the statistics. The last time Trump was president, didn't the rate of violence against LGBT skyrocket?
Yeah, I don't think it was as specifically transgender violence. I think that's what we're going to see a focus on. But yeah, LGBT people are scared too and looking at moving out of the country. I was hearing about a lesbian couple who has a child, and so they have to look at what legal protections they're going to need. Certainly this couple with the trans parent is afraid that just being a trans parent could be seen as a sex crime. You're seen as deviant, so your children could be taken from you. And there's been a lot of, the real fear-mongering has been that, the state is forcing kids to have surgery, forcing kids to go on hormone blockers. Parents get to decide. Kids don't get to do anything until they're 18 years old. And so parents have this really tough decision-making process that they navigate with their doctor to discuss. And for many of them, they're trying to say, is my kid suicidal? What do I do to keep my kid alive? It's heartbreaking what people have to go through, what parents have to go through. This is hard. They know it's hard. They just know it's not going to be an easy path. But they've got to decide that with their doctors. The state can't decide it.
A friend of mine's great niece was transitioning, and I believe he was 7, 8, 9 years old, maybe a little older. They lived in your fair state of Texas, and they were being denied gender-affirming care, so the family just picked up and moved to Colorado, where they can get that care now. I think there'll probably be a lot of those.
Where could you move and feel safe?
Well, as you know, we passed Prop 1, right? Here in New York State. So New York State is probably one of the safest places in the United States. But you mean worldwide?
Yeah.
What's safe, right? What's safe and for how long?
Thank you for being here with us this evening. This has been really informative and instructive. And I would like to say to Joyce, I'll look into my pronouns and my name tag tomorrow. And I've wondered, we've got the rainbow flag and safe space sign by the front desk. What else can we do? Let's keep the conversation going about what can make this a safer place for people who come in, people who live here, and those who work here. Thank you. But I have a particular situation with a good friend who has a trans daughter, an adult, a professional living on the other side of the country, and it has a family member has decided that's not okay. And the family is in just serious distress over that. And it's easy to support my friend because he's 100% and I'm 100%. But I don't know if I can do anything to demonstrate that, to provide support or encouragement to a more open-minded viewpoint for the whole family. Well, how can I be a better friend of the whole family and be present as somebody who's accepting of the trans daughter?
So are you talking about, I thought you were talking about, could you be someone who could be perhaps of help to the person who's opposed? Is that also included?
I'm asking you that.
Yeah, I think that as we were discussing, I was raised Episcopalian, and my mother really looked to her priest to understand my homosexuality. And I think as a person of the cloth, you carry such great weight. And so even just being able to offer, to listen and be open-minded and say some of the things you said to me tonight, which is about part of our faith is to be of embrace. So I would think you would be ideally suited to certainly provide any support for that family, to offer that, but also to that person if they wanted to talk, and maybe they wouldn't, and maybe they think you're brainwashed, but it doesn't hurt. Like, we've got to build bridges. We've got to build bridges. And how much people would love to see you here. You know, that 250,000 people that liked that video, like, this would mean so much. I'm like, can I take pictures? What can I do? Like, people need to know that there are older people who care and want to learn and grow. This is so meaningful to me and to so many, because you're open-minded. What else were you gonna say?
That was it. Thank you.
We have Jill.
I think it would help if we would all encourage others to attend the Allies meeting that Joe and Fred have. And it has helped me immensely because I raised a little grandson who is transitioning now at 21 years old. And my granddaughter is also a lesbian. It's really given me insight into what is going on in their life, which I accepted them. They are well accepted within the family, but I do believe the education that I've received in this group has made me feel more comfortable. It's scary. They are also Jewish. And I've watched him all through school get made fun of, all sorts of things. But the good thing that they have are close friends, which I was in education, and one of the things that happens with kids, if they have friends, that really helps. But I would suggest that all of us maybe bring someone to the next meeting. Marilyn and I put a little blurb in our monthly subscription. It comes out at the end of the month about what it is to be an ally. And hopefully that will help all of us to bring someone. I do understand also, Joyce, what it's like to be here and have people say things, because I'm much more aware of the comments that are made just off the cuff. The other night, somebody at dinner said to me, well, he's a faggot. I mean, it hit, you know, it was awful. I sat there, I understood her. She's older. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman, but it just came right out of her mouth. And
What came, right? What was the word?
she went faggot. And it just, you know, it hits you now.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Being that beacon, right? Being that beacon of someone who's willing to say, hey, come along with me, I invite you in. one of the things that I've started doing is my kind of third chapter is I'm making urns, small batch wooden urns. I was able to make one for Mary, for Joyce's wife. And I'm also making hormone boxes for this Christmas. So this is a ritual wooden box that people keep their needles and testosterone in. And so I said to my wife, is this the wrong time to be trying to sell these boxes? And you know, somebody got to come after us and kill us. And she said, you know what, trans people need nice things too. Let's do it, let's get it out there and see if, you know, let's spread some joy and some honor and respect. So thank you for sharing that, and I agree, inviting people to come along and being that beacon is so important.
Well, thank you, Sterling. It was very, very good. I learned a great deal. And yeah, as Jill said, the fourth Tuesday each month, 2 p.m. in the art studio, if you'd like to join us. We talk about all kinds of great things. We have fun too. So, but thank you, Sterling,
I'll
very
be here
much.
if anybody has questions.
Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for coming.